In this video, we'll learn about Southwest Minnesota Arts Council's Art Project Grants for fiscal year 2026, which runs from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. The intent of the Art Project Grant Program is to stimulate and encourage the creation, performance, and appreciation of the arts. This grant will cover most arts programming that an organization is doing. The maximum grant amount is $10,000, which is new this year. It was previously $7,000. And funding sources for this grant include Minnesota's Arts and Cultural Heritage or Legacy Fund and Minnesota State General Funds. Applicant organizations need to be located in Southwest Minnesota Arts Council or SMAC's service area, which includes 18 counties and 2 tribal nations. These are Big Stone, Chanshayapi or Lower Sioux Community, Chippewa, Cottonwood, Jackson, Candy, Ojai, Lac-Oparle, Lincoln, Lyon, McLeod, Meeker, Murray, Nobles, Pajutazizi or Upper Sioux Community, Pipestone, Redwood, Renville, Rock, Swift, and Yellow Medicine. We acknowledge that the Southwest Minnesota region occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people. Art Project grants are open to 501c3 nonprofit organizations, units of government such as city, county, or tribal government, and public schools with a community-focused project. If your organization is operating in the spirit of a nonprofit but doesn't have its 501c3 status yet, you can apply using a fiscal sponsor, which would be an organization that does meet the eligibility requirements, who would receive and manage your project funds for you. Your application would then need to include a fiscal sponsor agreement between your 2 organizations, outlining how that relationship will work. Someone from the fiscal sponsor organization will also need to sign your application and contract. Art project activities can include things like music and dance performances, which could either be put on by community groups or by professionals brought into the community theater, visual art exhibits, readings by authors, art classes for community members of all ages, public art, and arts festivals. Arts organizations may also include prorated operating expenses in their request during the time frame of their project. An example of that would be an Arts Council's request for their yearly exhibit series, including a proportionate amount of rent, utilities, staff time, etc. There are a couple of changes to the guidelines around operating expenses this year since we have discontinued our operating support grants. Those changes include that no more than 40% of the requested grant funds can go toward operating expenses. Arts organizations that previously received funding through our operating support program need to wait for projects beginning January 1st, 2026 or later to request operating expenses through this grant. And organizations that have average annual expenses of $174,000 or more, which would make them eligible for operating support from the Minnesota State Arts Board, cannot include operating expenses in their art project request. We also have an overall funding limit. Organizations are limited to $20,000 per year in SMART grant funds across all grant programs. This may require your organization to do some planning at the beginning of the year to figure out what you want to be able to apply for during that time span. The following activities are not eligible for these grants: projects that don't have an art focus, activities of a for-profit project, organization, or business, educational projects within a school system, activities that take place outside of Minnesota since we are using state funds for these grants, activities that are not open to the public, religious socialization of the participants or audience. Also ineligible are fundraising events. In other words, the grant funds should enable your project to break even, not to make a profit. And you also should not be using your project to fundraise for other causes. Also ineligible are payments of debts incurred before the grant begins, grant funds being used to match another SMOT grant, receiving a direct Minnesota legislative appropriation or legislatively mandated grant from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund for fiscal year 2026. So this would be funding allocated directly to your organization by the state legislature. And you are also ineligible if you have a past due final report still outstanding. There are several deadlines for the Art Project Grant Program. Round 1 deadline is July 23rd for projects starting September 1st or later. Round 2 deadline, November 12th for projects starting January 1st or later. And Round 3 deadline, March 18th for projects starting May 1st or later. And for all of these deadlines, applications must be submitted by 4 p.m. on that date. You'll need to choose a start date for your project, and in doing that, you'll want to check for the earliest allowed start date, because you cannot start any project activities before that date. These would be things like ordering supplies, holding auditions or rehearsals, doing any advertising, whether paid for by the grant or not, making any payments to artists, so no funds can be expended before that start date. If there's something that you do need to pay for before the start date, such as a deposit on a contract, you cannot include that amount in your grant project budget. You'll also need to choose a project end date and make sure to give yourself plenty of time to both complete the project and to evaluate it. And all grants awarded in this year, fiscal year 26, need to be finished up by June 30th of 2027. In preparing to fill out your application, these are the kinds of questions you'll need to answer and materials you'll need to gather. You'll need to provide a description of project activities and event details, description of the artists or artistic works involved in your project and your rationale for choosing them, artist resumes or bios and work samples, along with information about other key non-artist personnel for the project. You'll also need to include your plans for reaching underserved or underrepresented communities through your project, proposed project outcomes and an evaluation plan, estimated audience numbers, planning and marketing schedule, the support and collaborations you are expecting from the community, an itemized budget, a summary of your organization's history and programming along with a board list, some demographic and organization data, and contact information for your project director and authorizing official. The project director is the person who will be most directly responsible for the day-to-day activities of the project. The authorizing official is someone who has authorizing power for your organization, like the president or treasurer. And these do need to be two different people in these roles, and both will need to sign all of your grant documents, including the application. Scoring criteria for the Art Project Grant Program include the artistic quality and merit of the project, worth 50% of your score, impact on the participants and audience, worth 22%, reaching the underserved or underrepresented, worth 14% of your score, and your ability to accomplish the project, also worth 14% of your score. And we'll go into each of these in a bit more detail. For artistic quality and merit, the reviewers will be looking to see if the activities have high artistic merit and potential for participants to develop knowledge, skills, and understanding of the arts, if the artists involved have an appropriate level of experience, and if the artist's work shows technical skill and artistic vision or voice. A little more information about what we're looking for as far as artistic quality. Reviewers will be looking for authenticity or originality, technical skill, personal artistic vision or voice, professional commitment, and work that brings forth some sort of response from those experiencing it. If you are working in folk, traditional, or cultural art, the reviewers will be looking for authenticity, technical skill, commitment to the art form, and recognition from the community to which that art form belongs. Continuing on with details about the criteria for reaching the underserved, reviewers will look to see if you have identified underserved or underrepresented groups in your community. They'll also look for specific attempts to reach out to and involve at least one of those groups in your project, and efforts toward ADA accessibility. For ability to accomplish, reviewers will be looking for an appropriate timeline, budget, and marketing plan, community support, and evidence of a strong organization, board, and non-artist personnel. SMOC staff can offer assistance in several ways as you work on your application. You can talk through your project with us before getting started and make sure your project is eligible, you're applying under the right grant program and deadline. You can get answers to your questions about the application as you're starting to work on that. And SMOC staff can also review your application before you submit it. If you let us know up to about 2 weeks before the deadline, we can guarantee we're able to look at that and give you some feedback on whether you're missing anything, if anything might sound confusing to the reviewers, etc. There are also many resources available for you on our website at swmnarts.org. The site includes guidelines and criteria, important dates, a preview of application and report questions. There are also instructional videos available, including how to use the online grant system, how the grant process works, and some grant writing topics like reaching underserved and underrepresented communities, and grant goals and evaluation. You'll also find workshop opportunities, both virtual and in person. Also on the website are some sample documents so you can see what a contract looks like, for instance, along with credit lines and logos you may need to use. There is a login to the online grant system and multiple ways to connect with SMOC staff. Thanks for learning about Southwest Minnesota Arts Council's art project grants. Please contact us with any questions or visit our website for more information.